Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken on the phone with Russian President Vladimir Putin and US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson about the first downing of an Israeli fighter jet by Syria since 1982. Damascus says it was a response to Israel's violation of Syrian airspace. Israeli forces have reacted by attacking 12 targets, including both Syrian and Iranian facilities. When the jet was downed, the pilots managed to eject. It all began with Israel intercepting what it claimed to be an Iranian drone crossing Israeli airspace. So the IDF sent fighter planes to target the presumed location of the drone operator. And the perspectives in Syria and Israel on the situation differ in several respects.
This morning, the Syrian Army Command issued a statement confirming that Syrian aerial defenses intercepted Israeli fighter jets that were carrying out an airstrike on a location in central parts of the country. And then later on, Sana news agency, the state news agency, said that Israel carried out subsequent airstrikes on locations west and south of the Syrian capital, Damascus, and also said that aerial defenses from the Syrian army have been intercepting these attacks. We can also confirm that the sites that were targeted in the earlier attack that took place on dawn today is the T4 air base in central Syria, in the deserts of central Syria near Palmyra. My military sources are saying that there has been no casualties, only 3 wounded soldiers in this dawn's attack, but there is no official confirmation so far. This way has been hit before by Israeli airstrikes earlier this year, and back then Israel said that it hit what it believed to be a gathering of Iranian advisors in the command building of the Syrian Army's 1st Armored Division.
Well, it's a play in 3 acts. It all started with an Iranian drone, a remotely piloted vehicle, which entered Israel proper. We don't know yet whether for surveillance or attack, and it was shot down by an Israeli armed Apache helicopter. Now, following that particular incident, the Israeli Air Force has retaliated against the launcher of this particular drone, hitting the command and control vehicle and perhaps the launcher itself. And during this attack, one of the Israeli F-16s was either hit by Syrian ground defenses, or the pilots got the impression that they are about to be hit and bailed out. Israel has again retaliated, hitting the 12 targets, several of them being Iranian and several Syrian. This is the most serious incident between Israel and Syria, and definitely between Israel and Iran in many years.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister is under growing pressure in his own country. Thousands marched through Tel Aviv Saturday, calling on Benjamin Netanyahu to resign over corruption allegations. Journalist Max Blumenthal has details.
For over a year, protesters have been gathering every week to demand the indictment of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for corruption and graft. This protest in Tel Aviv has taken on an especially electric atmosphere. That's because this Tuesday, the police chief of Israel is expected to recommend Netanyahu's indictment. Earlier tonight, Temeni Naftali, a former maintenance worker for the Netanyahus who helped launch these protests, told me he fears that Netanyahu's influence on the investigation could fatally compromise its independence. A Palestinian member of Knesset, Jamal Zahalka, complained that nailing Netanyahu on corruption charges would be like jailing Al Capone for tax evasion, completely evading the fact that Netanyahu has committed much greater crimes in the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu, for his part, has struck a defiant tone, declaring that the truth will come out and that his critics are engaging in fake news.
A Turkish military helicopter has crashed near Syria's northern border. This is where Turkey is carrying out an operation against Kurdish militias which it considers to be terrorists. At least 2 people died in that incident. The Turkish president vowed that the perpetrators would pay the consequences.
Our helicopter has just been downed. Of course, all this will happen. We are at war. There'll be casualties on both sides. Yesterday, we destroyed their missile depots. Surely, we'll make them pay a heavy price.
What we do know is that the helicopter came down, according to the Kurdish fighters, near the village in Syria's Afrin district to the north of the country. According to the Turkish side, according to Erdogan, the president, the helicopter was shot down in Hatay province. That's a southern province in Turkey, which borders Afrin to the west of that region. Now, we know that 2 Turkish soldiers were killed in that incident. We don't yet know the type of the helicopter. But according to the Prime Minister, Binali Yildirim, the cause of the crash is as yet unclear. We don't know if it was a technical malfunction, weather conditions, or actually brought down. So still unclear as of yet. What we do know is that this incident certainly won't help to calm the situation in the region. We also know that it's the 3rd aircraft to come down in the region in the last week to 10 days. The first one was the Russian Su-25, shot down over Idlib by rebels. The other one, the Israeli F-16, by Syrian anti-aircraft fire. And now this helicopter as well, proving that groups in the area do have the weaponry to hit targets and bring them down at a distance.
I'm sure lots of people are wondering why Turkey was on Syrian territory in the first place.
Well, exactly. The Turkish General of Staff said they hit 19 targets in the region. That included shelters, ammunition depots, gun positions belonging to terrorists, an umbrella term the Turkish government often uses to describe Kurdish militias in the area. Now, it's been 3 weeks since Operation Olive Branch was launched on January the 20th, a Turkish military operation to clear the border region of terrorists, as they're described by Erdogan, and bring the Syrian land back to Syrian people. And Erdogan recently stated that once Afrin is liberated, the Turkish army will go further. Take a listen.
We're going to continue the Olive Branch operation until we achieve our goals. And then, as promised, we will clear Man Beach of terrorists. After that, we will continue our struggle up to the Iraqi border until no terrorists are left.
Our Turkish forces are a long way from reaching Idlib or any areas truly deep inside Syrian territory. But what this does mean is that Turkish forces in the long run could get bogged down in a quagmire against armed groups which ironically have been supplied by the United States.
So what's the threat that we could see things escalate further?
There's definitely a risk of escalation. US forces are present in northern Syria, in Kurdish territory, where they've been involved in those train, assist, equip missions, helping Kurdish fighters against Islamic State. Now, Erdogan has said Manbij is a city that could be next, where this could bring the Turkish forces into direct conflict with those of the United States. Take a listen to how much this worries the Americans.
We would call on, certainly on the Turks, to not take any actions of that sort. We don't want them to engage in violence, but we want them to keep focused on ISIS.
Now, Turkey and the United States, of course, are NATO allies. They have been for decades. But in this particular conflict, they support sides which are diametrically opposed. And certainly when the fight against ISIS may well be over, that conflict, those tensions in northern Syria, are unfortunately only at the very beginning of what could be a long and difficult, drawn-out process.
We asked Middle East expert and contributor with Al Monitor, Ali Rizk, about whether the tragic incident could be used by Ankara for further escalation in Syria.
I think that the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan already intends to escalate. So I don't think that this particular incident will, be used as a kind of justification. As we heard in his remarks, he intends to go on to Manbij and then go on elsewhere, reaching up to the Iraqi border. But I think that he will face some very, very huge, monumental challenges, because even in Afrin, as I said, the Turks are encountering such difficulty. Manbij will be a different story. That could threaten a potential showdown with the US ally. I don't think Turkey is ready for that. So I think that the Turks are in a somewhat difficult position, but Erdogan has climbed this ladder of escalation, and I think the problem he faces is who can bring him down, allow him to withdraw at the same time saving face. It's quite a big predicament, I think, which he faces.